Hello. Welcome back to Proverbs, a letter to my son. This morning we're going to be looking at lesson 5 of 17, and we're using the New American Standard here as the base translation. And we will be looking at Proverbs chapter 1, verses 20 to 33. That will cover what happens if you reject wisdom. Remember our choice in Proverbs 1:7. We can choose the fear of the Lord and the blessings and gain that come from following God's way, or we can be like a fool and pursue the world and experience the hurts and losses that result from that. Before we proceed, if you haven't done it yet, please stop and download and print the file, Don't Reject Wisdom PDF. Choose the NASB file. You'll find it at my website, jlsparaphrase.org. And have this in front of you as we proceed. It will make understanding this material much, much easier because we're going to be jumping all over the page, and you'll see how, as a visual learner, how I have moved text right and left on the page so that thoughts group themselves. But if you read from left to right, top to bottom, it reads exactly as the NASB text. So I've not changed any of the wording. I have merely moved stuff on the chart. So have that page in front of you as we proceed. Now this paragraph, Proverbs 1:20 and on, can be outlined in this way. Number one, where wisdom calls, that's verses 20 and 21. Who wisdom calls, that's verse 22. What wisdom offers, notice on your paper now, you have a red block at verse 23. These are the benefits of choosing wisdom. And you'll see the line going to the right and down to the bottom to a red box down there in verse 33. That's another benefit that wisdom offers. But if you don't choose wisdom, verses 24 through 32, the sequence of what happens if you reject wisdom. And we don't want to do that. So we'll start by looking at who wisdom calls. Look at your sheet. Wisdom calls naive ones. And what did we say a naive person is? Someone who seldom, if ever, considers the consequences of their choices. So they make poor choices and have to suffer the hurts or losses that result from those poor choices. But what does it say about the naive? They love simplicity. They don't want anything to do with discipline, of knowledge. They just want to do what they want to do. Are they bad people? No. They're just naive. They don't consider the consequences. But the next one now, scoffers. What about them? They delight in scoffing, in running down good and godly people, in running down the Bible. They don't want anything to do with it. They want their own way, and they think they're right. And then fools. What about fools? Well, they hate knowledge. Do you remember in our earlier studies, in step 1 of the 4 steps to learning and living the book, it says, to know wisdom and instruction? Later in that section, it says that fools hate wisdom and instruction. They hate the very things that we're encouraged to gain. So fools hate knowledge. But these are the people that wisdom is calling to come to her, to choose her. Now, what does wisdom offer? Well, first look at verse 23. That's in the red block, the upper one on your page. Turn to my reproof. I will pour out my spirit upon you. So what's she saying? I will give you the power to live a good and godly life. What's the other one there? I will make known my words to you. Look at the upper red box. And what's she saying? I'll give you the power to learn and understand the truth. Now follow that red line around to the right and down to the bottom, and we'll look at verse 33. But he who listens to me shall live securely. Why does he say but? Wisdom has just finished explaining what happens if you reject wisdom. And for those who reject, there's a disastrous end. But he who listens to me shall live securely. That's that bottom red box on your chart. And what's she saying? You get real security, not just partial security. And then, and will be at ease from the dread of evil, that bottom red box. What's he saying there? You have real peace of mind. So these are the benefits that come from choosing wisdom. But for those that don't choose wisdom, now you say, wait a minute, I'm a believer in Christ. I'm trying to live good and godly. I would not reject wisdom. Be careful, because it can happen without you even realizing it, and that's why people do it. They don't realize what they're doing. We'll look at that when we get done here. But for right now, we'll move into to the section on your chart that deals with what happens if we reject wisdom. Look on your paper there. On the upper left of that lower section, verse 24, it says, because I called, I stretched out my hand. Remember, we're reading from left to right, top to bottom. When I put the next block up, you'll see the remainder of because I called. But the issue here is that wisdom is calling people to herself, saying, come to me, follow me, I'll help you. But you have to do it my way. You can't do it your way. So wisdom calls. And what is this person? We realize we're talking about people that are rejecting wisdom now. So wisdom calls, and what happens? You refused. So to read it as the text reads in the Bible, because I called and you refused, I stretched out my hand and no one paid attention, you neglected all my advice and did not want my rebuke. So wisdom calls, and basically this person says, go take a hike. I'm not going to do that. I know you're telling me what I should do, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going my way, and I'm going to do what I want, what I think is best. I may not have all the facts, but I'm going to do what I think is best. So what happens when we reject wisdom? Well, look on your chart. Calamity comes, dread, distress, and anguish result. Why? Because the choice was a bad one, and it produced bad results. When we get done here, I'll give you a practical application of how this functions in real life. So things get hard, and guess what? They don't like what they see as the result. But what does wisdom do? Wisdom said, okay, dummy, you didn't want my help. Guess what? It's your baby now. I'm not gonna help you. In fact, I'm kind of tickled that you were so stupid. So I will laugh. I will mock. So what happens next? These people are in dire straits. Things have happened that they don't like. The results are bad, and they're trying to figure a way to get out of it. Verse 28, then they will call on me, and they will seek me diligently. Here's the foxhole prayer. Lord, get me out of this mess, please, and I'll serve you. You and I both know that most foxhole prayers are not genuine prayers. It's just, I don't like what's happened. Get me out of here, please. And it's not, Lord, I made a mistake and I want to fix it. It's my problem. I want to fix it, but please help me out of here. No, it's just give me, and when that's all over, they forget what they promised the Lord. So they do this foxhole prayer because things have gotten really, really rough. So what happens now? Well, wisdom says, you didn't want me, I don't want you. Go take a hike. You told me to take a hike. I'll tell you the same thing. Go take a hike. Go take a hike. I won't answer, and you won't find me, because, wait a minute, I thought if you search for wisdom, you can find it. Isn't that what James says? If any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, and God will give it. Now, we saw in lesson 3 that that's not the case. We study and learn. But wisdom says, you won't find me. Why is that? Well, these people rejected wisdom, and now wisdom is rejecting her. Let's look at an Old Testament illustration of that. Look in Zechariah 7, verses 9 through 13. I'll read it for you. This is what the Lord of armies has said. Dispense true justice and practice kindness and compassion, each to his brother. And do not oppress the widow or the orphan, the stranger or the poor, and do not devise evil in our hearts against one another. But they refused to pay attention and turned a stubborn shoulder and plugged their ears from hearing. They also made their hearts as hard as a diamond, so that they would not hear the law and the words which the Lord of armies had sent by his Spirit through the former prophets. Therefore, great wrath came from the Lord of armies. And just as he, the Lord, called, and they would not listen, and so they called, and I, the Lord, would not listen, says the Lord of armies. So, what happened? They refused, God refused. And these people refused, and wisdom refused. Why did wisdom refuse? Because they hated anything about wisdom, and they didn't want it. They didn't choose the fear of the Lord. They wouldn't accept wisdom's counsel. They disdainfully rejected being rebuked by wisdom. So when they get to this point, what's left? Well, so they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be satisfied with their own schemes. In other words, they got to live with what they've made. The old saying is they've made their bed and they got to lie in it. All they can do is try to make the best of a bad situation. And that's the only result when someone goes this far. Now, you still might be saying, well, I don't reject wisdom. Is that right? Be careful, because I think you'll see that in some cases, you and I surely have in some place or other. Not this disastrous, of course. So I want to show you a flow chart of this section we just looked at. The green boxes are the red boxes on your chart. We have the spirit of power and knowledge, and on the bottom we have a security and peace of mind. The blue boxes are what wisdom offers, what wisdom calls. The yellow boxes are the response by those who reject wisdom. Notice, they refuse wisdom's call. Disaster comes. They make their foxhole prayer, and now they have to endure the disaster they've made for themselves. Now I ask you, what's the root cause of this kind of situation? What do you think? Can you come up with something? The text says it all. It says that waywardness, look on the lower part of your sheet, waywardness kills the naive. What are the naive? There are people who seldom, if ever, consider the consequences of their choices. So they go their own way and think they're doing okay. I've said in an earlier lesson, but my favorite illustration of a naive person is a guy that tied helium balloons to his Sears lawn chair, tied his chair to the bumper of his car and filled those balloons, and took a BB gun along because he wanted to fly. And when he severed the rope, it rocketed up to 16,000 feet because he didn't know it was that much lift, and then dropped the gun. So they had to rescue him. Now, was he a bad person? No, he's naive. He just didn't consider the consequences of his choices. And here, the waywardness, going his own way, is what will end up getting the naive killed. And then the fool is destroyed because he thinks he's right all the time. He's just complacent. He's right. You can't convince him otherwise. But this is the root cause. Now, do we ever go our own way and not pay attention to the consequences? Yeah, even believers can do that. And we don't need to be naive. We don't want to be naive. The verse at the bottom, look what it says. But he who listens to me shall live securely, and shall be at ease from the dread of evil. So if we listen to wisdom, if we listen to the scriptures, we'll live securely, and we'll be at ease from the dread of evil. Peace of mind. Wonderful, wonderful peace of mind. Now, I said earlier in this lesson that we will show you an illustration of what could happen and help you understand that you might, from time to time, make a bad decision, and you have to live through it. But let's look at that. Let's look at someone who wants their child to go to a prestigious university, and they're determined. They've been advised to send their kids to a Christian school where a biblical mindset and worldview are taught. Instead, they want to send them to this Ivy League school where the instructors are hell-bent on destroying the faith of their kids, but they don't care. They want to send them to this Ivy League school. So let's look here. We're going to mimic what's on your chart, and we're going to put in there basically what the text says, but we're going to change it for application. Wisdom warned me to send my kids to a Christian school. Aha, but I said, I'm not going to do that. I know better. That's useless counsel. I don't need that. I don't want any part of your advice. I know what I'm doing. So their kid goes off to school and comes back a year or two later, and they tell mom and dad, I don't believe in God anymore. I don't believe in the Bible. Oh, no. My child has rejected the Bible. I'm afraid we've lost him. I'm beside myself. I don't know what to do. This is an absolute disaster. I've made myself sick with grief. What am I going to do? And then wisdom stands back and said, that was a stupid decision, wasn't it? Dummy, I told you, and you just didn't listen. So these parents say, I know what we'll do. We'll pray and ask the Lord to help us. I'll pour all of my energies into praying to the Lord that he'll fix this mess. And guess what? Wisdom says, go take a hike. I'm not going to help you. You didn't want any part of me, so why should I help you? And then you say, why have I been so stupid? Why didn't I choose the fear of the Lord? I was stupid to reject wisdom's counsel. My pride drove me to reject sound counsel. So, I guess I'll have to live with a mess I've made, and I'm full of regrets. Now, that's a beautiful picture of an application that very well could happen to a believing parent, right? Well, there are other issues that could take place. Let's look at a few examples. Marrying an unsaved spouse. Oh, we've seen numbers of young people who said, but I love her or I love him. And they marry and they either end up in divorce or an awful marriage. Going deeply into debt, credit card debt. Oh, it's so easy to get there, but it's so hard to get out. And then you end up being a slave to the credit card company for years as the interest keeps piling up. Poor choice. Or looking at pornography. We look at that pornography and it either controls our mind and or it destroys our relationship with our wife when she thinks that she's just not enough for him anymore. What about pursuing riches? Have you seen the man that says, riches are my goal, and he ends up destroying his family, his kids, his own life? It's disastrous. And of course, we just looked at the one about sending a child to a non-Christian school and investing in what sounds too good to be true. I have a friend that did that. They invested in what sounded too good to be true, and it was, and they lost a good portion of their investments. Folks, we need to be careful not to reject wisdom. We need to engage in those 3 searches for wisdom found in lesson 6, I believe it is, chapter 2, where we do the passive search, the active search, and the continual search for wisdom. And when we do, then we will discover a fear of the Lord, and we'll find out who God is, what he is, and how he works in the affairs of men. And the result will be so that it will deliver us from evil men and evil women, and then we will choose good and godly friends. Folks, make good decisions. Choose wisdom. Don't be like this guy that sent his kid to a non-Christian school and lost his kid. Choose carefully. Listen to wisdom. Now, if we reject wisdom, then we cannot say that we have a biblical, genuine fear of the Lord. Therefore, we cannot be successful at learning and living the 4 steps of the book of Proverbs. Do you see how they build on each other? Now, this is the end of chapter 1. In chapter 1, we're merely told what we need to do. When we get to chapter 2, we're going to learn how to acquire a fear of the Lord and a knowledge of God. And then in chapter 3, we're going to see wisdom with the boots on, how to live wisdom. I hope you'll join me as we continue this journey through Proverbs. I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.